Have you ever played a game of tag where everyone's running, shouting, and bumping into each other? Or maybe a soccer match where things got a little too wild, feet tangled, the ball went flying, and suddenly it felt like a mini battle on the playground? Now imagine if all that chaos had a coach, a referee, and a cheerleader rolled into one. That's sort of what the ancient Greeks thought about a god named Ares, the god of war. But unlike tag or soccer, his game wasn't very peaceful. So who is Ares? Ares was one of the 12 big gods of Olympus. His parents? Zeus, the king of the gods, and Hera, the queen. Pretty powerful family, right? But Ares wasn't the favorite child. Actually, not many gods liked him. Why? Because he loved battle. The loud clashing of swords, the shouting, the rushing armies. He wasn't the careful planner or the wise leader. Nope, that was his sister Athena. Ares was more like, charge, let's go, smash first, think later. His favorite tools? A shiny spear and a shield. Sometimes he rode into battles in a golden chariot pulled by wild, fire-breathing horses. Talk about dramatic! And Ares wasn't alone. He often brought along his scary kids, Phobos, which means fear, and Deimos, which means terror. Imagine going into a fight and suddenly fear and terror are charging at you on horseback. Yikes! Here's one of Ares' famous stories. There was a time when Ares fought against the Greek hero Heracles. You might know him as Hercules. Heracles was on one of his big quests, and Ares tried to stop him. But Heracles was super strong. He picked up a rock and, wham, knocked Ares down. Ouch! In another tale, the goddess Aphrodite, who Ares loved, got him into a tricky situation. The sun god Helios saw Ares and Aphrodite together and told her husband, Hephaestus. Hephaestus made a magical net, trapped Ares and Aphrodite, and called all the other gods to laugh at them. Poor Ares. Even when he wasn't fighting, things didn't always go his way. These myths showed that while Ares looked tough, he wasn't always the winner. Sometimes, even the god of war had a bad day. Have you ever had a fight with a sibling? Or maybe an argument with a friend on the playground? That's a little like Ares. He reminds us what happens when arguments get too loud or out of control. But here's the trick. Just like in games, someone needs to calm things down and find a fair solution. That's more like Athena, his sister. So in life, we all have a bit of Ares inside, the quick temper, and a bit of Athena, the problem solver. Now, here's something cool. Ares gave his name to a real planet, Mars. That's because the Romans, who came after the Greeks, called Ares by a different name, Mars, the god of war. When ancient astronomers looked up at the sky, they noticed one planet looked reddish, like blood. So they said, that must be the war god's planet. And they weren't totally wrong. Mars is red because its surface is covered with iron oxide or rust. It's like the planet is wearing armor made of metal dust. And get this, Mars even has 2 moons, called Phobos and Deimos, the same names as Ares, scary suns, fear and terror. Isn't that awesome? So every time scientists talk about Mars and its moons, they're kind of telling Ares' story all over again. Now let's zoom into the future. What if astronauts set up camp on Mars? They'd be living on the planet of Ares himself. Would they name their rockets after his chariot? Or maybe build robot helpers called Phobos and Deimos to explore the rocky valleys? In fact, some Mars rovers already have warrior-like names, like Perseverance and Curiosity. Exploring space is a little like a battle, not against people, but against distance, cold, and danger. So maybe Aries, fiery spirit of courage and charging ahead, can inspire humans to keep exploring, but with wisdom too, Athena's touch, so we don't just rush in without a plan. So, what did we learn about Aries today? He was the god of war, wild battles, and fiery tempers. Not always loved, not always a winner, but definitely unforgettable. And even though he lived in myths long ago, his name lives on in the red planet shining in our night sky. Next time you see Mars twinkling above, think of Aries and his fire-breathing horses charging across the heavens. Thanks for joining me on this adventure. Until next time, keep your courage strong and your temper cool. Bye for now.